Welcome to the TOEFL Listening section. In this section, you will listen to an academic lecture and then answer questions about what you heard. You may take notes while you listen. You will have time to review your notes before answering the questions. Listen to part of a lecture in a university class. You will hear the lecture only once, so listen carefully. After the lecture, you will answer some questions about what you heard. Some questions ask about the main ideas and supporting details. Other questions ask you to make inferences or connections between ideas. Answer each question based on what is stated or implied in the lecture.
Good morning, class. Today we will examine the origins of jazz in New Orleans and how blues and ragtime combined there to produce what we now call early jazz. I want to frame the city as a cultural meeting place. New Orleans was a major port in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. That port function brought together African, Caribbean, European, and Creole musical practices. This contact set the stage for musical cross-fertilization. Two already existing musical forms were especially important. Ragtime provided a rhythmic and harmonic vocabulary derived from syncopated piano patterns. Blues contributed a melodic language of blue notes and expressive bending of pitch linked to African American vocal traditions. When musicians in New Orleans started to combine ragtime rhythm and blues inflection, something new emerged. We should consider how local contexts shaped the sound. Congo Square was a 19th century gathering place where African-derived rhythms and call and response practices persisted. Later, venues such as Storyville, the licensed red light district, offered steady work and places to experiment. Marching band and funeral traditions introduced brass instrumentation and a particular sense of communal rhythm known as the second line. Instrumentation is a concrete example of fusion. Early New Orleans ensembles often used cornet or trumpet to carry the main melody. Clarinet added rapid, improvised lines above that melody. Trombone provided counterlines and tailgate effects. Piano and banjo supplied the rhythmic and harmonic foundation influenced by ragtime patterns. The combined texture often resulted in polyphonic collective improvisation rather than single instrument soloing. A few individual figures illustrate these processes. Buddy Bolden is often remembered as a proto-jazz band leader who emphasized loud, driving cornet playing and collective ensemble energy. Jelly Roll Morton later claimed to have invented jazz, and his compositions show how ragtime piano and improvisatory elements could be organized into arrangements. King Oliver and the Creole Players bridged written music and oral improvisation. The first widely distributed recordings labeled as jazz were made by the original Dixieland Jazz Band in 1917, and those records reveal both New Orleans influences and the complex racial dynamics in music circulation. Technically, what distinguishes early New Orleans jazz is a blend of syncopation, swing feel, blue notes, and collective polyphony. Syncopation comes from ragtime and West African rhythmic roots. Blue notes and bent pitches come from the blues and vocal idioms. Collective polyphony, the simultaneous improvisation of cornet, clarinet, and trombone, yields a texture that feels conversational. Musicians traded short motifs and responded to each other in real time. Another factor was the Creole musical tradition. Creole musicians often had formal training in European harmony and reading. When they played with African American musicians who learned by ear, the result was a hybrid practice that combined written arrangements with ear-based improvisation. This hybridization accelerated the development of jazz phrasing and harmonic sophistication. Consider the social function of music. Parades, dances, house parties, and funerals required adaptable musicianship. Players learned to switch between written tunes and improvised passages. This practical versatility encouraged rhythmic looseness and spontaneous invention. In short, New Orleans produced jazz because the city fostered cultural contact, provided performance context for experimentation, and offered musicians both written and oral musical resources. The fusion of ragtime syncopation and blues tonalities with brass band practices and Creole musical training created a distinct sound that traveled out of New Orleans to shape national and international jazz forms. When I say that New Orleans was a musical laboratory, I mean that different traditions were tested together, producing innovations like polyphonic improvisation. As we move forward in the course, we will listen to examples that highlight these elements. For now, remember the key components. The convergence of blues and ragtime in a city rich with brass band and Creole influences produced an improvisatory, syncopated, and communal music that we call early New Orleans jazz.
Listen again to part of the lecture, then answer the question.
When I say that New Orleans was a musical laboratory, I mean that different traditions were tested together, producing innovations like polyphonic improvisation.
This concludes the listening section. For more TOEFL practice tests and study materials, visit spinta.org.